Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for attending today. So my name is Paul Bolton. I'm a client director at CJ by NielsenIQ. Today I'm going to be taking you through a look through the future of drinks. So we're going to be basically covering the goings-on in the on-premise, kind of what's driving trends at a macro level. Then we're going to look at some subcategory trends across the different categories we see on the bar. And then finally, kind of a bit of a wrap-up. What do we think is going to happen over the next couple of years? So quite a lot to get through. These slides will be available for anybody who wants them at the end, so please just come up and let me know. But yeah, we're gonna go firstly through those macro trends, then look at drinks trends, then look at finally that sort of future view. So where have we come from in the on-trade? So obviously it's been a very tough time over the last 2-3 years, everybody knows that. But actually, eating and drinking out, from an occasion perspective, has actually remained fairly steady. We have seen an overall drop-off of the occasion. But actually, if you look at this slide on the chart on the left-hand side, we can see that actually the number of people visiting weekly and the number of people visiting monthly has actually stayed fairly consistent over the last 6 to 8 months. And actually, you know, we have seen more people saying they're going out less frequently. But actually, we're still seeing a core group of consumers who are going out more frequently. And those are really the guys that we want to be targeting. Those are the guys that are the most engaged, go out the most, and are worth the most money, ultimately, for drinks owners and operators. Ultimately, we know that the on-trade is still a huge part of people's lives. When we ask consumers about what they would prioritize when we look at disposable income, visits to the on-premise still come out top, ahead of clothing, vehicles, holidays. You know, there's a real appetite still to spend money on the on-trade. And why is that? Well, it's still you know, a huge part of people's lives, still a fundamental activity. It's the main way they socialize with people. And it's a treat that they really look forward to. But also at the same time, we can see there's that affordable treat element too. So there really is a bit of a polarization effect going on, where some consumers are looking to, you know, spend the money they have on big occasions. But we also have consumers who are still seeing the value in going out on a more casual occasion and getting the most for their money when they're there. What this has meant really is that actually when we look at total drinks performance versus last year, we're actually in a pretty good place. Average value rate of sale is up 6%, not too far behind inflation. This is despite the fact we've lost around 12,000 outlets since the start of COVID. We've had train strikes, we've had the cost of living pressures, inflation, heating bills, you know, huge amount of problems hitting the on-trade week after week, month after month. But to be in this position on the MAT versus last year, I think is really, really positive. I think we should be looking forward to the next 6 months and beyond with a lot of hope and positivity. We'll look through some of the results more recently as well to show you what's going on this summer. So it's not a case that we're seeing consumers cut back necessarily in terms of the quality of drinks they're drinking or the quality of outlets that they're visiting. Those have stayed fairly similar. Instead, we've seen a little bit more of a change from a perspective of consumers are cutting back on the number of drinks they're consuming on an occasion. And yes, spend has come down, yes, occasion has come down, but we're still really seeing that premiumization trend that we've seen for a number of years is still very much alive and well, which obviously is great news for premium brands and premium outlets. Consumers are also telling us that in terms of what they really want from a brand, for it to be high quality, for it to be reputable, for it to be trustworthy, good value comes out on top still, but that does not mean cheap. It means something that's worth its money, something that's that value for experience. So again, this isn't a case of consumers looking for the cheapest brand on the bar or on the back bar. You know, they're looking for something that they think is worth paying their money for, and a lot of those consumers are looking for that premium treat spend. When we look at occasions, just to add a bit more context to kind of what's going on from a perspective of macro trends, we can see that actually the casual occasion is becoming more and more popular. This really sort of bounced back in the last couple of years after COVID, where maybe high tempo, big nights out were a big part of a consumer's repertoire. After COVID, because they'd missed those occasions. We're now seeing a slide back towards more casual occasions, but treat is still there as the second most popular occasion, really showing that upsell, that premiumization occasion is still there. Then we look at from a kind of a day part perspective. And it's kind of in line with that casual point. We're seeing a dip in late evening and late night when consumers are telling us they're visiting, and more of a move towards early evening, mid-afternoon and lunch. And I think a lot of that is driven by the fact that we've got a lot of consumers who are working from home. This is a trend that's sort of been born out of COVID. It's still here now. In London, for example, the majority of consumers do work at home, and consumers are telling us that they're going to be working from home the same amount over the next 6 months. So this has obviously meant a lot of opportunity for some of those localized outlets. Pubs in particular have made a really good comeback in the last couple of years, but also for those local brands, you know, it's a real opportunity for those guys to resonate with a consumer who is staying at home most of the week. And this has also affected value sales. So on this slide, we basically have taken each day of the week by how much value it makes up over a week. So we can see that in the total market, 28% of the total value for the week goes to a Saturday. But what we're actually seeing is that those days, Friday, Saturday, Wednesday and Thursday, are actually losing share in the total market to Sunday. And I think a lot of that really is due to the shift in those working patterns. People are staying at home a lot more often on a Friday and a Monday, and with the rise of hybrid working, they're much more likely to be in the office in the midweek, and it's really accelerated in London. You can see on the right-hand side there a massive loss on a Friday to the rest of the week. I think the Sunday point is really interesting as well. The Monday point, people thinking they can go a little bit more crazy on a Sunday because they're not going to be in work the next day, and maybe a bit of a hangover isn't such a bad thing. We ask business leaders on an annual basis about some of the trends that they see working from a concept perspective. And what we're really seeing is experience-led venues and competitive socializing really coming out as the top outlet types in terms of what they think will succeed in the next 12 months. So we think there's still a really big opportunity for brand owners to get involved with these guys. These are the guys that are really driving growth in city centres. They're often lighthouse outlets, so people go into a city centre or a town centre and are then there for the night or they're there for the day. So I think really crucial part, still very small in terms of actual outlet numbers, but in terms of opportunity, I think still really important. And yeah, it varies. You know, we've got golf, shuffleboard, escape rooms, arcades popping up everywhere, and it's not just city centres. You know, it's town centres, it's suburban areas as well, providing that reason really for consumers to get out and spend money and enjoy, as we saw earlier on in the deck, enjoy socialising with their friends. But it doesn't just have to be about axe throwing or arcade machines. I think experience as a whole is becoming more and more important for any outlet. So for pubs, for bars, even if it's live music, if it's you know, beer tasting, spirits tasting, quiz nights, everybody's looking for a reason to come out. And I think this is becoming more and more important, and it's a real opportunity for drinks owners to get involved in those marketing campaigns and bringing people into those outlets for those occasions. So we'll move on now to drinks categories, and I think important to kind of consider some of the points we've looked at in the first section, because they do influence what we see going on within some of these categories. So firstly, at a top line level, value share of total drinks, so we've split by beer, spirits, wine, cider and soft drinks. And what we can really see is that beer has been the real winner over the last year. You may remember after COVID, spirits had a really big sort of rebound. There was those high tempo occasions, there was people looking for those celebrations, those big nights out that they missed over the COVID period. And what we've seen is that a little bit of a normalization trend coming back over the last year, where older consumers are going out. As we've seen, people are going out for more casual occasions, and beer has taken that share away from spirits, essentially. Cider and soft drinks have also benefited, and I think a lot of the weather we've had recently has really helped that as well. But we do know that the cost of living crisis is having an impact on consumer choice. So we saw earlier on that consumers aren't downgrading the quality of their drink, but that doesn't mean they're downgrading the category, because actually what we're seeing is more consumers saying they're choosing cocktails, glasses or bottles of wine, or spirits and mixers less than they are choosing pints, bottles of beer and cider, or soft drinks or no low. So people essentially making that decision that I've got less money in my pocket. A cocktail might cost me, 12, 13 pounds, whereas a pint might cost me 6, 7 pounds. It's a way that I can save a bit of money on a night out, and that's the real challenge for spirits in particular, is how to play in this new market where we've got consumers that are essentially looking at other categories and assessing their choices really, really rigorously. And this is happening across the board. So basically what we've done here is we split down each category by age, and then looked at the number of 18 to 24-year-olds that are drinking beer, for example, which is 33%. And what we can see here is that it's a problem for spirits across the board. It's not just younger consumers that are sort of decreasing, it's older consumers as well. And you can really see the great job that beer in particular has done at that younger age bracket to bring consumers in. We'll talk a little bit about why that is in a little while, but yeah, really shows that challenge, particularly for spirits. So starting with LAD, starting with beer and cider. So in terms of the real winners, again, I stood on this stage last year and we talked about how World Lager had gained loads of share away from Standard Lager. It's hitting all those really premium cues. World Lager is in more outlets than ever. It's in outlets you would never expect it to be in 2 or 3 years ago. But it's still there, and it's still absolutely taking all that share away from other categories, particularly Standard Lager, which again is suffering a lot more. Still very big, but still suffering. And the other real success story is Stout. I think we all know who that is, and again we'll talk about why that is in a little while. But those are the real success stories where categories like craft beer have held their own, to be fair, and cider as well has gained a bit of share on the back of the weather in particular. And this really shows it. I think we've got some results in the last sort of 2 or 3 months in terms of uplifts for value versus last year for beer and cider, and we can see those, huge uplifts, double-digit uplifts, which are really impressive in the last 2 or 3 weeks in particular. So the weather, obviously, June has been particularly good from a sunshine and heat perspective, but also we've had 3 bank holidays in a row. We've had the FA Cup final, we've had the Champions League final, we've had the Coronation weekend. So beer and cider in particular have done really well on the back of these. And I think it's really important that brand owners, are utilising these great occasions because they're really paying dividends for both those categories at the moment. I think in terms of the success of some of the brands that we see within beer and cider, have come from some of these really key cues. So I think quality and perspective, the Stout brand, which we won't name, I think has always done a really good job of ensuring that pint pour is really consistent across the board. It's become a bit of a flagship attribute for that brand. I'm sure you've all seen the TikTok accounts which are based on the serve of that particular brand. I think Standout as well is really important. Glassware, fonts, POS, all things that have become more colourful and more standout in the last few years. Social media and sponsorships, again, really important. Again, the Stout brand that I won't name has owned certain events, sporting events, rugby, St. Patrick's Day, for example. And I think Lighthouse Activation, finally, in terms of being that beacon in a city centre, as I talked about earlier on, and really attracting people into your brand and then who go away and become loyalists. Moving on to spirits then. So we know the category is struggling, but there is winners within the category. So I think the key winners here that we see are rum, whiskey, and cream liqueurs in particular, and vodka as well on the left-hand side, which is obviously the biggest category. But there is a little bit of a tale of two subcategories going on there. So non-cream liqueurs have been the real loser, and I think that's on the back of the drop-off of the high-tempo occasion. Some of those big shop brands in particular have struggled to kind of keep up with the change in occasion dynamics, whereas rum brands, whiskey brands, a little bit of an older consumer coming back, and a little bit of a more casual occasion fitting into some of those categories in particular. That's not to say that some of these brands are doing well in the late night, because they are, but yeah, some different things at play there. And gin, I think, traditionally doing very, very well for a long time. Last year we saw a bit of a dip in the boom. It's actually recovered a little bit, and I think that is due to that older consumer coming back and due to that occasion slowing down a bit. Obviously, it is still losing share. And we can kind of see some of the drivers here. So flavoured vodka up 47% versus last year. Non-flavoured vodka is actually down, so it is being driven very much by flavoured vodka. Some of those new brands coming through, gaining a lot of momentum, gaining a lot of noise, and really appealing with consumers. And actually taking, from a flavour gin perspective, a lot of that volume and value. We're also seeing a rise in spiced and flavoured rum. You know, a lot of new and exciting NPD in that category. Cream liqueurs is an interesting one. So it's based a lot on actually the baby Guinness serve is actually driving a lot of this, and I think it comes back to that point around that brand that I just named but didn't name before. And then, yeah, as we see on the top right-hand side there, non-cream liqueurs really having a tough time. So it's for brand owners, it's really about how can we fit into the new occasions that are arising. Cocktails, obviously, are still a huge part of that. Value's grown versus last year. We've seen a slight drop-off of total spirits, and I think there's two things happening here. There's consumers who are basically looking to cut back, and I think the promotional mechanics in particular can be a real point of growth for cocktails. But then there is consumers that are looking for that treat occasion. I think 45% of consumers still consider cocktails to be a treat. So when they are going out for those concentrated occasions, those bigger nights out, cocktails still play a huge role. I think the spritz serve as well. This is from our mixed drinks report that we do every year. Consumers really calling out how successful this serve has been. I think the way that it does that is that earlier on we saw that the late night's taken a bit of a tail off, yet we've seen growth in the earlier day parts, and spritz can really fit into those earlier day parts, and yeah, should be a real opportunity for all spirits owners. We'll touch briefly on soft drinks. So not done too bad in terms of at a total level. And I think what we're seeing from a category perspective is very much driven by the decline in a couple of categories. So energy drinks in particular have suffered on the back of the late night, struggling, and total mixers as well on the back of gin. Whereas Coca-Cola, for example, has picked some of that back up. Juice and beverage syrups have also picked some of that up on the back of being involved in cocktails primarily, but also some of those adult soft drinks, some of those more premium soft drinks that are appealing to a wider consumer set who are looking to moderate maybe on a midweek occasion or at the weekend, and they want something premium. And I think that's really driven the growth there in some of those categories. Because we know ultimately consumers are still, we've talked about it for many years, but they're still prioritising their health. 31% say they're prioritising drinks that are healthy. You know, people are looking to eat less alcohol, so drink less alcohol, lower sugar alternatives, moderate dietary change, drink alcohol-free alternatives. There's still a massive opportunity for no and low. So in terms of a GB level in the on-trade, no and low spirits are worth 15 million, which is up 5 million versus last year. So a lot of momentum happening. Still very small in the overall context of spirits, but still a real opportunity for those guys. And NABLAB, again gaining share of total beer. Very small share, but it's become a must-have in many outlets. And I think there's still a real opportunity for those brands that are looking for a point of difference in particular. Finally, sustainability, we know continues to be really important. 44% saying it's a choice driver in terms of where they visit, and 36% say that environmental credentials are important. So any of those cues that are already out there are still really, really important, and could be that decision between someone choosing your brand and someone choosing another brand. In terms of wine, so last of the categories, white wine in particular has gained share versus last year, and I think it's really played into that drinking occasion in particular. Whereas red more aligned to the food occasion, and we know the food occasion has taken a little bit of a hit. Sparkling wine is in growth, some consumers trading down from champagne, but I think also some of those newer brands that are coming through, some of the British sparkling wine brands doing really, really well. So that's really helping sparkling wine to grow. Whereas rosé as well is growing. Some of those more premium brands coming through within that category at the expense really of champagne and red. So that was a view of subcategories and macro trends. We're going to have a quick look now in terms of what we expect to see in the next sort of 6 months to a year, and then we'll have 5 minutes at the end for any questions. So this is one of my favourite slides that we produce actually, because it helps us to inform our narrative for the next year. So essentially, we ask business leaders on an annual basis what they think will be the trends, or will continue to be trends going forward. So at the start of this year, the no and low choices coming out overwhelmingly on top, growing again versus last year. Really lots of opportunity within that category. We also see the likes of World Lager gaining momentum. We see British wine, as I've mentioned. Draft cocktails at the bottom there, which we haven't really covered this year, but still seen as an opportunity for operators and brand owners. And yes, we're seeing a bit of a pullback for some of those categories like craft beer for cocktails, but they're still really high up there. They're still seen as an opportunity. And I think the overwhelming theme again is premiumization. It's trade up. It's categories that are going to appeal to a consumer who are wanting to treat themselves. We also asked them about which categories they would look to increase the number of on the bar, or which ones they would look to decrease. So a similar kind of picture here in terms of lots of those operators saying that they're looking to increase the number of no and low, beer and cider, as well as spirits, as well as World Lager. Tequila and rum coming out fairly high up as well. This does mean, obviously, that there's some losers. So gin in particular, again, lots of rationalisation happening in that category. Standard lager as well. So it's really about how an operator makes those decisions, and how a brand owner can still be there when that rationalisation is made. What data is there to back up why I should still be stocked on the bar? What benefit is that going to have for consumers coming into your bar, or is it going to bring the right kind of consumers into your bar? Another really, really great slide is we ask business leaders around how suppliers can support them. So they often say lower prices, which is not really a surprise, and obviously can be very challenging, particularly in the current economic climate. But some of the other elements I think are really, really important ones to consider. So sustainability again comes out as that move towards net zero. Support around staff training, social media, menu development, events, market insights, so all kind of things we've covered throughout the deck, but I think really, really interested in, and it kind of shows a bit of a roadmap of how suppliers can help going forward. We've also got some big events coming up in the next couple of years, which I think will have a bearing on overall performance. So we've got the Women's World Cup, which starts this month. We've got the Rugby World Cup later on this year, and the Euros, the men's Euros in July 2024. So as we saw earlier on, there is a real opportunity for all spirits categories. It's not just beer and cider that we see uplifts on when we see major sort of sports tournaments. Spirits, soft drinks, wine all gain a halo effect. And then we've also got some other events. So the duty increase in August obviously is going to benefit some categories more than others. So it'll be interesting to see how that kind of develops. And then Christmas this year, I think we said last year that Christmas would be the first normal Christmas since 2019, but it wasn't really, because we had the World Cup. This year will be the first normal event. So I think, again, it'll be really interesting to see how that plays out. I think the challenge really is with spirits of how to bring consumers back into the category, or how to tempt them to upgrade, because we know there is a significant proportion of consumers who aren't considering the category when they're out in the trade at the moment. So that's it from me in terms of before there's any questions. So I think four or five key points to leave you with. I think value for experience and the treat occasion are still really, really important to consider. That there is that polarization in effect, but I think the treat occasion in particular is still a huge opportunity. Playing into those changing occasions, we know we've seen occasions become more casual. We know that consumers are looking at earlier in the day, and we know that consumers are looking to travel closer to home. So again, it's about what is the strategy there from an operator perspective, from a brand owner perspective, and how you can help shape those occasions for those consumers. Activations, Standout and socials, absolutely vital, and I think we've seen some really great examples of those over the last couple of years in particular, in gaining new consumers particularly. Gaining some of those newer, younger consumers and keeping that brand and that category refreshed. And then finally, health and sustainability, particularly from a business leader's perspective, still being called out as a category that's going to win. It is still small from a share perspective, but still lots and lots of opportunity there for that category. That's it from me. So really hope you've enjoyed it, and please give me a shout if you've got any questions.
Hi there. Oh, is it on? Okay, hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
What do you see, if any, future for like ready-to-drink / ready-to-serve categories? I'm thinking things like hard seltzers have come to the UK. Sorry. But we've not really seen it taken off. Like, do you see this as an opportunity going forward, or?
Yeah, I think there is an opportunity, but in the right places. I think the struggle will be in certain venues where drinking out of a can, for example, isn't something that is the norm. So I think particularly in areas where maybe there isn't the expertise behind the bar to make a cocktail, and canned cocktails could do a job. Hard seltzers, I think there should be an opportunity during summer, but again, I think it has to be the right outlet, it has to be the right consumer, has to be a younger consumer. But I think those kind of third space competitive socialising venues, for example, are a great match for some of those categories. But yeah, it's all about placement, I think.
Hello there. Just a quick question about the support in sustainability.
Yeah.
Is there any evidence to say which organisation, bars, restaurants, and what have you, are turning to authenticate the sustainability of the drinks brands that they're wanting to acquire?
I don't have any with me today, but there absolutely is, and I think for consumers, it's about that real kind of, they want that rubber stamp. These guys know what they're talking about, and they are making a real difference. So, if you want to drop me an email, like we can definitely follow up on that, because there will be some extra context that we can provide on that. Anybody else? Cool. Cheers, guys. Have a good day. Oh, sorry. There is one more person.
Well, hi, my name is Harold. I had a question on the longer term future. So in the year 2035, do you think, I'm very interested in wine, do you think that there is a drink which could replace wine as sort of the standard drink to be had alongside meals? Thank you. Wow, what a question. I think there's still obviously a huge place for wine at the moment. I think we always see peaks and troughs within eating out, and I think at the moment we're in a little bit of a trough. I think it'll be about ensuring that the consumer in the next 10 years is brought on that journey. I think some of the natural wines, some of the British sparkling wines we're seeing having some real success. So as long as those kind of trends continue and people are brought on board to the category, then I would expect that brand to continue. I think, though, that the job that food pairing can do for categories like beer, cider, even spirits and cocktails, we see some operators doing that really, really well, are also an opportunity. So I don't think it's just about wine, and maybe in 10 years, we will see more of a link between some of those other categories, because I think there is a real opportunity there. But I can't fully give you an answer on that one, I'm afraid. It's we struggle to do 2 years, but just because of the social changes and economic challenges that we see every week at the moment. So yeah, it's difficult.
Hello, my name's Danielle. I just have a quick question. How do you see festivals and live event space adding value for brands, for various alcohol, non-alcoholic brands?
I think it's about the equity. I think it's really great for bringing a consumer into a brand in the first place. So sampling and activation within those festivals, we know have a great impact on consumers. They go away, they see the brand in a bar in a supermarket, and I had a great experience when I was at this festival. So that really helps. I think it's maybe less about volume and value at a festival for a lot of brands. And more about that recruitment, because ultimately that's what it's about, right? It's getting consumers into your brand in the first. Yeah, absolutely. Hi.
On the First Lady's question, I mean, you touched upon it about the value for money, people having less purchasing power and so on. Are you seeing more D2C in terms of the canned cocktails and bottled cocktails? I think obviously there was an increase during lockdown, it tailed off a bit, and it appears that we're seeing more and more canned cocktail brands. Is that a thing, particularly in D2C, or is it just a small percentage?
Yeah, I think within the on-trade, there is a place for it, but I think for consumers going out for an experience, particularly in a lot of bars and sort of more premium spaces, they're expecting the bartender to know how to make a cocktail. But I think there is still, as I said, opportunities in other areas where maybe that expertise isn't there, or it's a quicker service kind of point. But it's a way for brand owners to leverage that. If someone buys one of those in a supermarket or a shop, it's a way to recruit consumers into seeing that on a cocktail menu, for example, in the on-trade. So I think that it works both ways, and there is an opportunity there. But in terms of pre-batched and draft cocktails within the on-trade, still a very small part of share.